problem solver, someone who can think on their feet and not be overwhelmed by failure, and who can bounce back from that without it weighing too much on their ego, because it takes a toll, failure, to anybody, I think, but being able to sort of either compartmentalize it or deal with it, some way of coping with failure and turning it around into learning. I think that for me, I just have seen people that I went to grad school with who did the student teaching internship and then quit, or quit during it, and friends of mine who have now quit teaching. Those are the reasons why some of the important reasons why they've quit, because they can't the failure is personal, or so they think it is, and it's hard for them to turn it into something that's valuable and learn from it, I guess is what I'm saying. And what was the second part?
How should teachers be assessed?
How should teachers be assessed? On their ability to problem solve, I think, honestly. I mean, their ability to be flexible and work with students and respond to students' needs in a way that, a measurement of that, I guess. And that's incredibly difficult, and that's why standardized tests are so
irrelevant
and politically attractive, because they're easy and they're cheap. But measuring how well a teacher can think on her feet or teach. I mean, figure out what a student needs and respond and really measure growth and learning, and that's individualized. I mean, that's incredibly difficult to measure and to assess. So I guess that's, for me, I think that's the answer.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, the problem-solving part. And like I said earlier, if, like Ron drives and thinks about a lot of, things that he could work on or help kids out, I do that a lot. And, when I talk to my mentor who lives in New York, the fact that I'm thinking and struggling and feeling, like I want to change something, I think that's a mark of a good teacher. In terms of like assessing teachers, I think that a lot of the reliance on standardized test scores is that there's so much desire to assess teachers accurately, but administrators often don't have the time to do it the right way. So there's if you have a school with like 500 teachers and you're supposed to assess them, 2 times a year or whatever, a lot of it becomes very cursory. So, but I think, assessment works if it's looking at the wide range of what a teacher does, and not just a snapshot of walking into a room and walking out. I think schools that hire in a way that is more thorough have less issues about wanting to get rid of teachers. So my school doesn't have tenure, but I've never heard of a teacher that left involuntarily. So.
Yeah, I'm sort of with you on that. I think teachers should be judged by human beings with expertise in education that come in and watch the practice.
And there's a reason that doesn't happen. To go back, I know it's expensive. And it's true that if you compare that expense, that is, I've done lots of classroom observations, and most principals, apart from time issues, really aren't dependably skillful observers of teachers. Most of them don't have a lot of teaching experience. And in many schools, even many schools that are quite good, it's undependable how good the relations between the best teachers in that school and the principal will be. They're often at least slightly antagonistic, because good teachers are sometimes, how can I put this, unconsciously troublemakers. Because they don't follow orders well, and they shouldn't.
Especially bad orders.
Yeah, and so there's a complicated culture in a very good school, even one that has a competent principal. So principals really aren't the people who should do the observations. Structurally, they're the only people available, but they don't actually have the time. If you hire outsiders, you need to have outsiders who are really skilled at observing classrooms. They're scarce. There are not many.
I was reading about this, and it was one of the most shocking things I've ever read about education, was, you know, with how much time an administrator needs to observe and evaluate. I was reading, I think it was the Gates Foundation or some major foundations investing in videotaping teachers and then outsourcing it to expert teachers who get paid a lot of money, and then just based on one video be able to give you a thumbs up or thumbs down. And that's shocking to me. I think the best teacher evaluation systems are not immediately punitive, but give you a year, 2 years to, you know, get to where they think you need to be and provide you all the supports that you need.
All of which is yet more expensive.
Yeah.
Sort of ongoing teacher support and mentoring is ultimate to follow Tom. The answer, no school system in the country can afford it now. Is to hire people whose job it is to come in, to be sympathetic partners to teachers, to suggest critical things to them in doing difficult jobs and how they could do things differently. So it's a resource that would make a difference. There is one kind of testing that would be useful to teachers, but it doesn't assess them. It's actual teaching that helps teachers spot what particular students need from them that they're not getting. And I don't know of any school system in the country that uses those kinds of tests. Do you? Any? But the focus is to figure out, to be diagnostic as opposed to evaluative. And to tie the diagnosis to a feedback to a teacher in a way that concretely makes a difference.
I'd like to say something about that question. I think it's kind of like the question of education now. I mean, you watch a film like Waiting for Superman, you know, and they're figuring out, well, you know, they're talking about how these charter schools have created these incredible schools where they got the results, and you know, it's like magic. But there's a lot of things that is missing out of that equation and from that analysis and from the understanding of how the evaluating student work really works. I teach in South LA. I think that a lot of the standardized tests are very culturally biased. You know, and we know this, right? Like the questions and the nature of them and the content of them really don't speak to our students or the type of language that my students kind of interact with. They know they can, if they're given a proper assessment, they can show you that they know the specific skill set that you're asking them to do. But if you ask them in this really confusing multiple choice question when there's 2 right answers, they have to pick the best one, it becomes much more convoluted. I work in a charter school organization called Green Dot, and we have Bill Gates that's given millions of dollars to create this evaluation system for teachers, and as part of it, there's a merit-based pay clause in it that is tied up in test scores. I think it's very dangerous for education. I think it's very dangerous for teachers when this starts to happen. I work at a school that has 500 students and like 34 teachers. We've lost 9 teachers in 1 year. And it has a lot to do with the way that my principal has been evaluating people. Very punitive, very reactionary. And I mean, part of education is being ready for that. You know, in LA, the LA Times was publishing teacher scores across the internet. There was teachers that committed suicide because of the scores that were being printed in the newspaper. And I think it's just a really dangerous path that education is moving towards. There's millions of dollars that the Gates Foundation is putting in my school district and other school districts across the country. I think it's dangerous because it starts to tie in capitalism with good teaching, and when that happens, I mean, the nature of cheating, the desire to, you know, even more so to teach to the test becomes even stronger. There was a whole charter school organization in LA about 4 weeks ago that was caught cheating. The person from the top down, all the way to the principal, all the way to the teacher, was completely cheating on the standardized test to make sure that this charter school was able to operate and stay open and look good rather than the other schools. So this, when you tie in teachers' money to that, and we already don't have enough money as it is, I mean, how are we really going to evaluate student learning? But at the same time, you know, you have, like, for example, in Tucson right now in Arizona, they have the first and the most successful ethnic studies program in the whole district, Tucson Unified. K through 12, they have Chicano studies class, they have Chicano literature classes, they have classes that teach Nahuatl and indigenous languages to youth. And their program has showed not just results in standardized tests, but assessments and portfolios and project-based learning. But the test scores have also skyrocketed. The admissions to college has skyrocketed. The graduation rates have skyrocketed. And then all of a sudden you have Tom Horn, the superintendent of Arizona Public Schools. You have the Republican establishment in Arizona that's attacking the program, that the program has been closed down effectively, or they're in the middle of a legal battle right now. So you have to ask yourself, like, where is the interest and how are the power players really using this evaluation system as a way to control how youth are taught, and to control, I would say, the dumbing down of American youth, particularly in the inner cities. So I think it's the question of our times, man.